إسحاق ويعقوب. You've probably heard that in the Quran, right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, his son Ishaq, his son Yaqub, right? And his son was Sayyidina Yusuf. So he's the great-great-grandson of Ibrahim. How does the story start? Yusuf has a dream where he sees 12 planets prostrating, doing sujood to the sun and the moon. He sees the sun and the moon prostrating to him. And his father says, who's his father? What's his name? Yaqub's alayhi salam. He tells Sayyidina Yusuf, don't tell your siblings, don't tell your brothers and sisters about this dream, because they might feel jealous that you had such a great dream of the sun and the moon prostrating to you. That's a pretty big deal, right? And so what happens after that? The brothers of Yusuf become jealous because the father has such love for Yusuf alayhi salam. And so they plot. They talk amongst each other and they say, let's kill Yusuf, because our father loves him so much, we want some of that love too. But then they realize that's way too bad of a thing to do, so they decide to throw him in a well instead, or to abandon him in the earth, right? To sort of have him be adopted by another family or picked up somewhere. And so they go tell the father, Yaqub, can we please have Yusuf, and we'll take him out and we'll graze together and we'll have a nice time with him. And what happens? He says, no, I'm not sure, I really love him, I'm afraid for his life. And then Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam is sent off with the 12 brothers, and they put him inside a well. They throw him inside the well, and they come back home to the father. And what do they bring to the father? Anybody know? Yeah.
They brought his shirt that was teared up.
وَجَاءُوا عَلَى قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. Right? And they brought his shirt back with blood on it. And the father looks at the shirt and he said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ وَأَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. So your nafs has told you something. I don't know. I can't tell what's happening. But you're up to something, and I'm going to be patient. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. And this idea of sabrun jamil, beautiful patience, keeps coming back throughout the story. And what happens to Yusuf then? Anybody know? What happens to Yusuf from inside the well? Yes?
Some travelers come along and they use the well, but then they turn him into a slave.
Aha, very good. So, وَجَاءَتْ سَيَّارَةٌ, there was a caravan that came, فَأَرْسَلُوا وَارِدَهُ. So every caravan, when they travel, there's one person who's assigned to fetch the water from the well. It's one of the chores that it's usually a younger person that does it. And as soon as the younger, the warid, the water carrier basically sees Yusuf, and he's really happy because they know that they can sell Yusuf on the market and get a pretty good dime for him. So they hide him and they go and sell him, and he ends up in the household, in a very important household in Egypt, right? And the person who adopts him, the mother who adopts him, falls in love with him because he's so handsome, he's so beautiful, right? This is right in the Quran. And she falls in love with him, and eventually it becomes known that she's in love with him, right? And she's a bit embarrassed that everybody knows that the mother who's supposed to be adopting has feelings for it. It's natural to have feelings, right? But not to act on it. You have to act on it appropriately in the right moment, in my time, and so on. And so what happens? She brings together all these women that are gossiping about how much she loves Yusuf alayhi salam, and she sets a nice salon for them, with fruits and pillows and everything, and she gives them knives, right? آتت كل واحدة منهن سكينا وقالت اخرج عليهن. She gives them knives and she says, come outside, come Yusuf, join us in this assembly. And what happens? They start cutting their hands because they're like, wow, mashallah, he's so beautiful, right? So the beauty of Yusuf inside and outside, he's beautiful in every way. And then she says, this is the person that you were making fun of me of for falling in love with, right? So then Yusuf alayhi salam is sent to prison. Because remember, the mother who adopted is also the wife of the ruler of Egypt, right? Mara'atul Azizi, right? The wife of the powerful man of Egypt. So he's thrown into prison. He gets into, it's like a public scandal. It's what you call a public scandal. It's something everybody's talking about in the news, everybody's obsessed with, so they sort of get rid of him. What happens when he's in prison? How many men join him in prison? Let's see, somebody else on this side. How many are there? وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ. 2 young men enter prison, right? Is that what you're going to say? 2 young men. So they have dreams, right? Again, the dream. You heard the dream in the beginning? The sun and the moon are prostrating. Now here's another dream, right? And that dream was telling the future, and you'll see what it is in the end. This is another dream, and it's telling again the future. The first man has a dream that he's pouring wine for his ruler. And at that time, in that religion, wine was permissible. The second one was, he had a dream of a bird eating bread from his head. إِنِّي أَرَانِي فوق رأسي خبزا يأكل الطير منه. And so they tell Yusuf alayhi salam, they say, you look like a good person, you look like a righteous person. What does this mean? What does all this mean? And Yusuf, of course, being a prophet, being a blessed person, has an interpretation. He tells the first one, you're going to be crucified, and the birds will be eating from your flesh, right? You'll be hung on a cross. And the second one, you will be saved, and you will be pouring wine for your king. So he tells the one who he thinks will be saved, he says, when you get out of prison, go tell the ruler about me. Because it's been years, apparently, that he's been in prison. So what happens? He goes out, he forgets about Yusuf. And years later, the king is having a dream now and again. The king again, this is the third dream. إني أرى, right? سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف وسبع سنبلات. I see 7 skinny cows, right? He sees 7 sort of grains that are green and 7 that are dry and 7 skinny cows and 7 fat ones. What does this all mean? And his surroundings, they say, it's nonsense. أضغاث وأحلام. It really doesn't mean anything. And so the man who's pouring the wine, he's like, wait, I remember there was a guy in prison that I met and he could interpret dreams. Let me go back and ask him. Yusuf wa ayyuha as-siddiq. Yusuf, you trustworthy one. Aftina fi sab'i baqara. Tell us about there's 7 cows, what? 7 are fat, 7 are skinny. It's a really strange dream. What does it all mean? Yusuf has the wisdom. He says, 7 years of very good agricultural harvest. You'll have good plants, good rain. They'll come upon you. And then 7 are going to be devastating. So take the 7 good years of good harvest and store it away. And take the other 7, and what are you going to do with it? Eat it when you're in need, right? If you know you have something hard coming up, you have to prepare for it. So then what happens? The king says, let me go see Yusuf. Eventually Yusuf comes out of prison, he's all happy, and he's assigned as the custodian. Do you know what the custodian means? Someone who's in charge of the granaries of Egypt. Egypt at the time, you have the Nile flowing through Egypt. It's a very important site of grain, right? That's what you make bread out of. And so now Yusuf went, alayhi salam, from being in prison to being the great chief of Egypt. Who did we not mention in this story so far? The 12 brothers. What happened to those guys? The guys who threw him in the well way early on in the story. They're traders. They come to get their grain, and they don't know about Yusuf being in charge. They're trading with Yusuf, but they totally forgot what he looks like. It's been so long. They come the first time. The second time, Yusuf tricks them into bringing the younger brother, another brother called Benjamin in the story. And then a very serious drought hits. and now the brothers are really in need of Sayyidina Yusuf's help. And now he says, do you guys remember what you did with Yusuf way back, right? They go back. I'm skipping some parts of the story because how much time do we have, Hamza? Are we doing all right?
You're good.
All right. So these 12 brothers, they keep going back and forth between Yusuf, who's in charge of this grain, like basically all the food in Egypt, he has command over it. He can say, you take food, you don't take food, right? You can trade it, you can trade it for whatever you have. So Yaqub now sends the youngest brother with the 12 brothers. The father of Yusuf, sends the youngest brother with the children, with the 12 siblings to the granary. Who knows what happens when Yusuf meets his long lost brother, one of the brothers that didn't plot against him? Anybody remember this part of the story? He pulls his brother to him and he says, I'm your brother Yusuf, don't be sad about what happened. And then he tricks the 12 brothers into keeping this favorite of his, and they go back to the father and they're completely devastated. They say, we lost a second son and we had no choice. So what happens then? Yaqub is so sad, the father is so sad, he's lost two of his most beloved sons, that he begins to weep and weep until he turns blind. فَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. His eyes turned white from sadness, and he was in deep sadness. فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. So the brothers are now told by the father, look, we don't know what to do. Yaqub alayhi salam says, I have a feeling that Yusuf is still around and that he's back with the other brother. How can he have that feeling? Because he's a prophet, he has intuitions, he has feelings that come to be true. Eventually, they go back. It's a very, very difficult year. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam gives the siblings a shirt. Again, what was the first shirt in the story? Yes? Yes, and now there's a second shirt that comes in the story, and it's a shirt to heal the blindness from the sad father who lost Yusuf, right? And what does he do with the shirt? He throws it on Yusuf alayhi salam's father, right? Who can see again. And then all the siblings and the families, they're all brought, and the family is once more united. So this is broadly the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. It's a story of love. It's a story of forgiveness, right? Yusuf was now in power. He's the man in charge. He can, completely destroy anyone he wants. But he, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم. He brings them in. And do you know when this story was revealed? It was revealed in Fath Mecca, when the Prophet himself was opening, when he was conquering Mecca. He was conquering the people who mistreated him. And everybody in Mecca was thinking, oh my God, now the Prophet's coming with hordes, tens of thousands of companions, and he has the power to quash us. And what was the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet Muhammad, what was he saying to the Meccans? لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم. And the Meccans knew of the surah that was being revealed, so they went up to him and they said what the siblings said to Yusuf. What did the siblings say? The siblings said, we ظلمنا أنفسنا, right? إنا كنا خاطئين, we were in grave mistake. And so what does the Prophet ﷺ respond? لا تثريب عليكم. What else can you do, right? Of course. So it's a beautiful time where you have this wonderful story unfolding, Sayyidina Yusuf, and there's a story under it, which is the story of the opening of Mecca, which is the most glorious moment of the Prophet ﷺ's life in many ways. He extends generosity to the people of Mecca. Alright? So remember these two things. It's a story, and there's another story under it. It's a story of love. There's many dreams that come in and out of it. There's about 3 or 4 dreams. Then you have the shirt that appears twice, and it's a story of forgiveness and love. And that's how you should be thinking and treating your own siblings when you're in times of hardship. لا تثريب عليكم. You don't hold a grudge. You forgive. That's the better thing to do. Any insights, any comments, any thoughts about the story of Yusuf? I was born in Egypt, and that's why my name is Yusuf. Yeah. This is the longest surah that I memorized. It took me about four or 5 months. If you're memorizing the Quran, this is a really nice one because it's a story from beginning to end, and you can just, if you forget, you're like, oh yeah, well, when the brothers returned from Egypt, and oh yeah, the younger brother now, it makes sense. If you know the story well, you can really memorize the surah, unlike many other surahs where the stories kind of jump from Sayyidina Musa to this or that. This one begins and ends sort of on a nice storyline. It's sort of like memorizing a series or something. I mean, it has many stages. It's one of my favorite surahs in the Quran. Yeah. Any thoughts about it?
Forgiving.
Huh?
Forgiving.
Forgiving. Indeed. And yeah.
Even though like your siblings do bad things, they mean well.
Indeed. Yeah, if you know your siblings. But what do you think of the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf? How many people are in love with Sayyidina Yusuf in the story? Yes, Saleh.
A lot.
Alright, mention the first person that loves Sayyidina Yusuf.
The wife of the king.
Even before the wife of the king, who's first in love? The father, right?
Father.
He's the favorite son of all the sons, right? إِنَّهُ لَا يُحْزِنُنِي أَن تَذْهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ. I'm really sad. I don't want to let him go. I don't want a wolf to eat him if you take him away, right? And then who's the second person that falls in love with Sayyidina Yusuf? Somebody mentioned it. Yes.
The wife of the king.
Yes, Mra'atul Azizi, right? She falls in love with him, and then who else falls in love with Sayyidina Yusuf's beauty? Yes.
All of the people she brought in for the
Yeah, the women that start cutting themselves, right? Uncontrollably, right? And then who falls in love with Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam? Yes. The prisoners. Inna naraka min al-muhsinin. He's radiating beauty. You know why? Because if something is beautiful, you cannot but love it. You have to love what's beautiful. You know why? Because that's your fitrah. You're born, your innate born disposition, the way you're born, the way Allah Ta'ala created you originally, is to be attracted to beauty and to be repelled from ugliness, right? And so everybody can recognize the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, right? Inwardly and outwardly. Then who also falls in love with Yusuf? The two prisoners love him for inna naraka min al-muhsinin. You're clearly among one of the righteous people. Interpret this dream for us. Yeah.
The king right after.
The king as well. The king is like, قَالَ أَتُونِي بِأَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي. I want to free him myself. Bring him to me, right? And then he puts him on a great position of privilege and power among his kingdom. He trusts him with the granary. And then of course, we love him as well, right? We love him for his beauty and for his example. So it's a story of beauty, and if you're beautiful, if you're a beautiful person inwardly, you'll be beautiful outwardly as well, and people will love you for that.
Love.
Okay.
Mostly when you come
Assalamu alaikum, my name is.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Adam.
You know, it's one of our 5 pillars. We have to fast. Everyone's always going to talk about the spiritual benefit. You know, Allah's asked us to do this for this reason. I'm going to take a different perspective that you probably won't hear too often. I'm a physician. I'm a doc, so I'm going to look at it from a physical perspective. From what is the benefit